I'm going to now ask, and you, the two government officials can do it from your chairs if you like. I'd now ask the two government officials to respond to that and maybe talk a little bit about how they're thinking about these issues. And if I can start with David Smol. David's Chief Executive of MBIE, the Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment. He came to that, as many of you will know, from MED, the Ministry of Economic Development, where he was Chief Executive. He joined the Ministry of Economic Development in April 2003 as Deputy Secretary responsible for the Energy and Communications branch, where I first met him. He previously was a director of an Oxford-based energy consulting firm with clients in the UK and Europe, including large energy utilities and transmission companies, renewable energy generators, regulatory bodies, and government departments. Welcome, David, and I look forward to a few comments.
Sure, Phil, thank you. Thank you for inviting me to participate, and thank you for the great job you've done leading business in New Zealand over many years now. Thank you to Penny and to the Sustainable Business Council. I think you're doing a great job. I also would like to acknowledge the business leaders, the exemplar business leaders that are up here. They are definitely at the forefront. Many of our businesses are not, and I think that's a big part of our challenge. Also to acknowledge colleagues, Luce Hanson's gone, but I think Doc's doing some great work with Air New Zealand and others in bringing an economic perspective to the way they think about the conservation estate. To Mike Underhill, who has been passionate about electricity more or less since New Zealand started electrifying quite a long time ago. And to Vicky, who's been a great partner in government. For MB, our purpose is to grow New Zealand for all. Grow is an economy. We do think a strong economy is a necessary prerequisite to sustainable quality of life for all of our people. But the for all part is to capture that the way we achieve that growth, the sustainability of that growth is also integral. And at the heart of it is to bring together the economic, the social, and the environmental. And increasingly, that's the way we are working in government. We are much, much more joined up across those domains than we used to be. We are changing the way we think about doing our work, co-creating, co-designing with partners in business, with partners in the community is ever more central to the way that we work while still playing to our respective strengths. Just cover two broad areas. One is just to reflect on some of the comments made about energy. We continue to think that oil and gas does have a part to play in the transition to a low carbon economy, but it is very much a transition for New Zealand as well as for the planet. And we need to get a number of things right on a sustained basis. First, to strengthen the scientific base, the quality of information that can inform decision making by all of us. Second, that we do continue to get our regulation as right as it can be. That is a core job that only government will do. The RMA continues to be a matter of debate. We would not have the renewable electricity system that we have now had we not managed to get the Resource Management Act working to enable the consenting of the many renewable projects that have come on stream of recent time. Third, we do need the infrastructure, particularly a transmission distribution network that can support the types of flows that follow from a highly renewable system while still maintaining security. Fourth, we do need to optimise the role of markets and the role of prices. Nothing changes behaviour like prices. I think we have got them right now in electricity. I'm not sure we're all that close to getting them right for carbon. We do need the sustainable investment environment. I totally agree with you there, Mike. And we do need informed and discerning consumers who will drive change as their expectations rise. We've got to get all of those factors right and keep them right through time if we are to make the most of our renewable energy potential. The challenge in the transport sector is looming. I wouldn't bet the country on electric vehicles just yet. I think a mix of solutions will be our future. Biodiesel will definitely have a part to play, but it will require major change in many of our systems to achieve that. And the last comment I wanted to make is just to talk very briefly about urban environments. They are integral to sustainability. The quality of life in our cities, the environmental performance of our cities is central. We are and we will remain a highly urbanised country. We're very committed as a ministry to playing our part to the full, working collaboratively with Vicky, Lou and others within government, working with partners in business and in our communities. Thank you.
And finally, could I call on Vicki Robertson to make a few comments? Vicky is the CEO for the Ministry for the Environment. She's been the Secretary since April 2015, still brand new, just getting into it now, Vicky. An internationally experienced executive with a background in law and economics. Vicky's a champion for inclusive growth, transparency and accountability in the state sector. Before her appointment at MfE, Vicky was a key member of the Treasury's senior leadership team, where she held Deputy Chief Executive, Chief Operating Officer and Acting Secretary and Chief Executive positions. Vicky.
Thank you, Phil, and thank you to the panel. It's really great to hear people who talk about sustainability in a way that is actually about their business. That's one thing that surprised me coming into the job, is that people still put things into two distinct buckets of environment over here, and that's a nice to have, and then business over here and economy over here, and somehow they're different. And if there's anything I learned at Treasury, is that these things are always intertwined, as is social and cultural values that we talk about for New Zealanders. So great to hear that all coming through today, and particularly in the front end of this. For MfE, along with our colleagues, we do need to get the policy environment right. One of the things that the questions I've raised internally as I've come in is that, what do we mean by policy? And actually, do we know how these things are tracking on the ground? So are we actually getting the outcomes that we thought we would from the RMA, from all the reform that we're doing? What are we doing on climate change, and how is that actually tracking over time? So really focusing our efforts on what are the outcomes we're seeking, what are the outcomes we're seeking today, but more importantly, what are the outcomes we're seeking in the longer term, and is today's work that we're doing actually getting us there or not? So that's kind of a shift that we're looking at to do internally. That really relies on really good data, scientific evidence about what's actually going on, and getting beyond arguing about the data and getting on to, well, what can we do about it? And we're really focused on that. We're about to hopefully pass the Environmental Reporting Act, which Statistics New Zealand for the first time basically will do an independent with us reporting on effectively the state of the environment. So we have our first census report coming out in October, and the SPC are going to be responding to that, which I really welcome. So that's all really important. I think the other bit is the question, the kind of flying kites I'm raising at the moment, it relates to some of what you guys have said, is, you know, we are a village. That makes some really fantastic ability to work together, to make things happen, to fail fast and to learn fast. And I think the role that we're increasingly looking to do is move beyond kind of collaboration, which seems to be a bit of consensus building, to co-designing and making things happen to make a change on the ground. And that's why we're so keen on working with SPC and actually working on some projects as opposed to just talking. So really keen on that. I think there's challenges in that, challenges with how you do that in a policy sense and work with ministers. But I think my real belief is that over time citizens are going to demand that. They're going to be walking around with their apps that tell you what their water quality is in their rohi. They're going to, you know, be able to text you and say, what are you doing about it? They're going to text us and say, what am I doing about it? And by the way, I've got these 5 solutions for you. I want to be involved. So how do we harness the community and what we're doing is probably my top tip. The other thing is, coming back from overseas recently, this real trend overseas, and we've talked about it and you've talked about it, about what customers are going to demand in the future or even now. So it's really interesting being in the States at the moment, where basically they're moving from products, just delivering products, to actually delivering meaningful stories that are actually going to hook customers and consumers in. And the meaningful stories, and this is actually happening across China and Asia as well, are linked to environmental practices, whether your food's safe, what the integrity practices are like, how you use your water, so I think that is actually starting to build. And I know you've talked about that before. I suppose the other challenge is, how do you shape that market? How do you in this room, how do we start to shape the markets that we're in, as opposed to wait for those consumers to wake up and demand it for you? For example, Rolls-Royce has come out of making just cars, and they're shaping a service market for that. So basically they're selling a service now. So, you know, that's not quite in the environmental way, although you could run it that way, but they are shifting the way that people actually consume cars. So challenges, I think, in that. But I think New Zealand's great because it's small. We can all work together. Apple talks about forced collisions as the way you get innovation. Well, the more that we can collide with each other, the more we can achieve. And I think, I'm really keen to kind of throw that forward.